The signs are everywhere. If you're a middle-aged man, you probably know a peer who has killed himself in recent years, at least one.
As soon as I left work, I was gonna kill myself. I just said, dude, you've got nothing to show for all your efforts. You're just a flunky in the machine, and it's time to get the hell out.
I have a male with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Callers advised of negative signs of life.
A male possibly committed suicide, still has the pistol in his hand.
Every year, nearly 45,000 people in America die by suicide. That's over double the number of homicides. In the last 20 years, suicide rates in most Western countries have fallen, but in the US, they've gone up by nearly a third. And there's one particular group of Americans causing the spike in numbers: white, middle-aged men.
Husband's suicide.
He just carried this tremendous guilt for everything, you know, for our son doing drugs. Then he started getting depressed, and then my husband took his own life.
How did he do it? I mean,
he blew his head off. Yeah, I came home to that.
best friend Marcy Connor's husband also killed himself.
And my husband actually had a G-tube in, a feeding tube in, and poured alcohol down his feeding tube until he died.
You work a straight through 48-hour shift?
Yeah, I'm covering the emergency department for a 48-hour stretch.
And how many people would you see in your shift?
20 is probably average. So if I see 20 people in 48 hours, 12, 13, you know, or 14-ish are going to be suicidal.
And what are you seeing? Is it getting worse?
Oh, it's getting, I think, much worse. Just in the time I've been working in this hospital, I think our numbers are coming up 20 or 30% per year.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, noticeable.
But despite in the last 20 years, suicide rates for white middle-aged men have skyrocketed, whilst those for black and Asian Americans haven't changed much. Just south of the camp is the largely white county of Missoula, where there has been a 50% increase in suicides in the last 5 years.
I was so attracted to him because he was this really strong, powerful man, you know, but he was always a little emotionally standoffish.
Before they met, Rick had been in the army.
All right.
He joined straight out of high school and within months was deployed to a frontline hospital during the First Gulf War. He returned to build a life which looked happy and successful. But under the surface, Rick was struggling.
I came home and I noticed he was off. I reassured him, I held him, and I'm so glad I did. The next morning, he dropped Lily off at school, and later Lily would tell me that he looked at her with really sad eyes and then walked away from her. So that's hard. He went back to the house. He called the sheriff and said, this is what I'm about to do, and walked out the door, took the gun with him, and took his own life.
If you take a look at the data from the Great Recession, you see what they mean. Even though the economy tanked and many Americans lost their savings, it didn't significantly move the suicide trend line.
You used the term deaths of despair. Did you guys coin that?
Yeah.
The addiction thing is so close to suicide. Some of the opioid doctors talk about a lost generation.
One of the things that intrigues the researchers is that it seems to be a North American phenomenon.
This is where the comparison with Europe is very important, because you don't really see deaths of despair.
Though in Southern Europe, you do see really high unemployment, particularly for young people.
We're not talking about unemployment here. It's much more to do with these, things that you would correlate with a spiritual crisis.
The Europeans are not killing themselves the way that the Americans are. They've lost jobs. Technological changes come to Europe. So one of the places our research will go next is what are the big differences between the Europeans and the Americans that it's helping the Europeans keep body and soul together.
Deaton and Case offers some theories. One, the breakdown of families.
the things that make people want to kill themselves or lose the meaning of life are to do with things like your marriage has never worked out. You know, you don't know your kids anymore.
There is no single reason for the growing suicide crisis amongst white middle-aged men in America. But what's clear from my time here in Montana is that people aren't talking enough. And that's one thing that this camp is trying to change.
It's okay to seek help. It's okay to have tough days. And when we do, it's okay to ask people that we feel like are hurting. Asking about suicide doesn't cause suicide.
This is Ron Archer. This epidemic of white middle-aged male suicide is very disturbing. And that's why we're creating a facility called the Place of Hope. It's a place that will be for men who need a safe place to come and be vulnerable and transparent, who can share their struggles, their pain, being left behind, feeling abandoned, especially for that age group from 45 to 65. Place of Hope. Hope means healing our people in every way. And there is a group in this country that's committing suicide 3 times as much as any other group in our country. Men who feel left behind, unappreciated, forgotten, and no longer feel like men. And Place of Hope is created to help restore them, renew them, bless them with our curriculum, with our fellowship. We located right near Lake Erie. We'll go on fishing trips and we'll fellowship and we'll heal one another through this epidemic. Places of Hope, healing our people in every way.